"Don't jump," said a struggling widower. Pulling the girl from the cliff, she turned out to be A. Thomas's boots scraped against the rocky ground as he trudged through the woods. The wind pulled at his coat, and the trees groaned like they, too, had felt the weight of grief. He hadn't planned to be out here. Not today. Not after the loss of her. But here he was, lost in thought, his eyes blank as he moved through the thick fog. Then the quiet, eerie calm was broken. A figure stood on the edge of the cliff, looking down at the jagged rocks below. She was young, maybe 16. Her back was to him, her hair wild in the wind. Thomas hesitated for only a second before he stepped closer, his heart pounding. "Don't do it," he called, his voice rough. The girl didn't move, didn't even flinch. She was teetering on the edge, a thin line between life and death. Thomas's hands were shaking as he reached out. "Please," he said, his voice strained. "Step away from the edge." With a sudden motion, he grabbed her arm, pulling her back with all his strength. She resisted at first, but then she collapsed into his chest, her body trembling. She didn't say anything, just stared ahead, eyes vacant. Thomas held her tighter, not knowing what to say. What could he say? He had no answers, only a deep, gnawing pain that he couldn't escape. "I can't stay here," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. Thomas didn't know what to do, but he couldn't let her go back to whatever had driven her to this point. "Come with me," he said, his voice steadying. "You don't have to be alone." The girl didn't answer, but she followed him anyway, her silence louder than anything he could say. Thomas watched her from the kitchen. The girl, Clara, she said her name was, sitting at the table, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. She hadn't said much since he pulled her away from the cliff. She hadn't said much about anything, really, just stared into space or out the window, as if the world beyond didn't exist. He couldn't stop thinking about it. The silence between them was suffocating. His grief, still raw and fresh, seemed to weigh heavier with her presence. There was something about her, something off, like a mirror reflecting the worst parts of himself. Her eyes, empty, hollow, seemed to remind him of everything he had lost, his wife, his home, his future. "Clara?" Thomas asked, his voice hesitant. "You want to talk about it?" She didn't look up, just shook her head, a small, almost imperceptible motion. Her long, dark hair fell over her face, but she didn't brush it away. Thomas stood there for a moment, watching her. She didn't look like someone in need of help. She looked like someone who didn't care anymore. That night, the silence in the house grew louder. The old house creaked and groaned, like it had its own ghost to wrestle with. Clara moved through the rooms, her footsteps soft, deliberate. Thomas, lying in his bed, heard her. She wasn't making noise, but he could feel her presence moving through the house. He got up and checked the hallway, but she was gone. She was out in the woods again, just like the night before. He stepped outside, the cold air biting at his skin, and found her standing by the tree line, staring into the woods. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice rough with frustration. Clara didn't answer. Her back was to him, but he could feel the distance between them. She didn't even flinch when he spoke. He stepped closer, but still she didn't move. The wind picked up, and Clara's hair blew around her face, obscuring her expression. "Clara, you need to talk to me," Thomas said, his patience thinning. "I can't help you if you don't talk." Finally, she turned to him, her face pale, eyes blank. "I'm not here for you," she whispered. Thomas froze. Her words hit him like a cold wave. "Then why are you here?" he asked. Clara's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned back to the woods, walking slowly, as if she were waiting for someone to come for her. Thomas stood there, watching her, feeling like a stranger in his own life. And he couldn't help but wonder, what had he brought into his house? The days blurred together. Clara stayed in the house, moving through it like a ghost. Thomas couldn't get her out of his mind. Her silence, her refusal to open up. But it wasn't just her silence that bothered him. It was the way she seemed to disappear. He would turn his back for a moment, and when he looked again, she was gone, vanished. One evening, after hearing nothing but the crackling of the fire, Thomas stood up from his chair. He couldn't take it anymore. "Clara?" he called out as he moved down the hallway. The house felt colder, darker than usual. The shadows stretched, swallowing the light. The air thick with something unspoken, like a storm was waiting to break. He found her in the back room, staring at the window, her face pressed against the glass. Her eyes were unfocused, her expression blank. "Clara," Thomas said, stepping into the room. "What are you doing?" She didn't look at him, didn't even acknowledge his presence. He stood there for a long moment before moving closer. "You can't keep doing this. You have to talk to me." Clara's voice came out in a whisper, barely audible. "It's coming." "What?" Thomas stepped forward, his heart racing. She didn't answer, just turned to face him. Her eyes were empty, distant, as though they were looking through him. Her skin had a sickly pallor, and her body swayed slightly, as if she were barely holding herself upright. "You're not the only one who's been waiting," Clara muttered. "They're waiting for me." Thomas felt his stomach twist. He reached out, his hand shaking as he touched her shoulder. "Clara, who's waiting for you? What are you talking about?" She finally looked at him, but her gaze felt distant, like she wasn't seeing him at all. "The house. The land. They've been waiting. And now it's time." The words hit him like a blow. His mind raced. What was she talking about? What was happening? Before he could ask another question, Clara turned, walking toward the door. "I'll be back," she said, her voice hollow. "Don't follow me." But Thomas couldn't stop himself. He followed her out into the night, his heart pounding in his chest. She was walking into the woods again, but this time she was moving faster, more purposefully. "Clara," he called out, but she didn't turn around. As he reached the tree line, he saw her, standing at the edge of the cliff, just like the night he first found her. But this time there was no hesitation. She stepped forward. "No!" Thomas screamed, his feet pounding the ground as he ran toward her. But she was already gone. Thomas's breath came in sharp gasps as he reached the cliff's edge, his hands trembling as he peered down at the jagged rocks below. His pulse hammered in his ears. Clara was gone, vanished in a heartbeat. His mind raced. How had she gotten there so quickly? He hadn't seen her move, yet there she stood, staring at the drop, the same vacant expression on her face. "Clara!" Thomas shouted again, his voice cracking, but she didn't respond. He stepped closer, panic clawing at his chest. "Clara, please," he pleaded. "Come back." She didn't even flinch, her eyes fixed on something far beyond the horizon, as if she was waiting, as if she was seeing something he couldn't. Thomas's feet moved before he could think. He reached out, grabbing her arm just as she took a step forward, pulling her back toward him. "Don't do this," he said, his voice hoarse, breath catching. "Please, Clara." She finally looked at him, but it wasn't the same Clara. Her eyes were wide and dark, not vacant but full of something else, something deep, something ancient. "It's already done," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The land's already taken me." He didn't know what she meant, but he couldn't let go. He yanked her back, holding her tightly, his own fear pulsing through him. "Clara, stop. I won't let you." Her body jerked against his grip, like she was fighting something unseen. She twisted in his arms and looked at him, really looked at him, before her eyes shifted downward to the earth beneath them. The woods around them seemed darker, quieter. The wind stilled, and the air felt charged, almost electric. "I'm marked," she muttered, her words sending a chill through him. "It's in me, in my blood. Marked," Thomas repeated, confusion and fear mixing in his chest. He pulled her away from the cliff, taking her back toward the house. Clara didn't resist, but her head tilted to the side. "The mark of the land. The curse," she said, her voice flat. "It's in the soil, in the trees. It'll never let me go." As they walked back toward the house, Thomas's mind was spinning. He couldn't understand it. What was she talking about? What did she mean by marked? And then he remembered the strange symbol, the one he'd seen scratched into the barn's walls weeks before. "Clara, what mark?" Thomas asked, his voice tight. Her eyes flickered up at him, and for the first time he saw something like fear in them. "The one that's on you," she said, her voice trembling. "The one that will take us all." Thomas froze. "What?" he breathed, the blood draining from his face. She didn't answer, but her silence spoke louder than anything. And in that silence, Thomas felt the weight of the curse press down on them both. The house felt colder when they returned, the silence pressing down on Thomas like a weight. Clara moved ahead of him, her movement stiff, as if she was walking through a fog only she could see. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that whatever had been lurking in the shadows, whatever curse had been whispered about for generations, was no longer just a story. It was real, and it was coming for them. Inside, Clara sat at the old wooden table, her fingers curling around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Her eyes were distant again, but there was a flicker of something there. Fear, perhaps, or something darker. "I don't understand," Thomas muttered, pacing the room. "What do you mean by the curse? What mark are you talking about?" Clara didn't answer immediately. She just stared into the empty space, her lips trembling. "The land, it's tied to me, to my blood. What they did to me, what they made me do." "Who made you do what?" Thomas asked, his frustration growing. She finally looked at him, her gaze piercing. "The Harpers," she whispered, the name carrying a weight that made Thomas's blood run cold. "It was always them. They made my family give the land to them, gave us a deal, a pact, one that we couldn't break." Thomas stopped in his tracks. "The Harpers," he repeated, his voice a low rasp. "But they control everything." Clara nodded slowly. "Everything. The land, the people, even death." Her voice grew softer, as if the words themselves were too heavy to carry. "When they took me, when they marked me, that's when it all began." Thomas ran his hands through his hair, his mind racing. The pieces were starting to fit, but it didn't make sense. How was she tied to them? How was she marked? "The curse," Clara continued, her eyes glazed, as if she was reliving something horrible. "It's on me. It's on this house. And it's on you, too. That night when you saved me, you broke something. You broke it wide open. And now the land is coming for us." The words sank into Thomas like poison. He stepped back, his mind spinning with all the things Clara hadn't told him. But this was too much to ignore. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice shaking. Clara didn't answer, her gaze shifting to the window, her face pale. "We wait," she said quietly, almost to herself, "and pray it doesn't come for us tonight." The room seemed to grow darker. The air felt thicker. Thomas wasn't sure if he could survive what was coming. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows of the house, but inside it was deathly still. Thomas sat at the kitchen table, his hands clenched tightly, his eyes fixed on Clara. She hadn't moved much since she spoke of the curse. Her silence was like a weight pressing down on him, suffocating him. Her words about the Harpers had echoed in his mind all night, keeping him awake. The mark, the pact, the land. It was all too much to take in, and yet it was impossible to ignore. "I don't understand," Thomas muttered, shaking his head. "How could you be marked? What does that mean for us?" Clara didn't look at him. She never did, unless she absolutely had to. She was staring out the window, her hands folded in her lap. "It means we're tied to the land, to the Harpers, to the curse they've placed on it. It means we're trapped." Thomas stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Trapped? No. I can't just sit here and wait for something to happen. We got to do something. We can't let them win." Clara's eyes flicked to him, her gaze cold, distant. "You don't understand. It's not about winning or losing. It's about survival." She paused, her voice lowering. "The Harpers won't stop until they've taken everything." Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. He had never heard such hopelessness in her voice before. "What do you mean everything?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. She exhaled a long, slow breath. "The land, the house, my soul, your soul, they own everything here. And they won't stop until they have all of it." The words settled between them like a stone sinking into water. Thomas's chest tightened. He could feel the weight of the house pressing down on him. He had always known there was something wrong with this place, but hearing Clara speak of it like this made it real, too real. He turned away, pacing the room, trying to make sense of it. So what? We just give up? We just let them take it all. Clara stood up suddenly, her chair scraping across the floor. No, she said, her voice firmer now. We don't give up, but we can't fight them like we want to. Not like this. Thomas stopped, turning to face her. Then what do we do? She looked at him for the first time, her eyes sharp, as if she had been waiting for him to ask that question. We prepare. We get ready for them. We don't give them a chance to take everything without a fight. The words hung in the air. Thomas could feel the weight of her resolve. The storm outside mirrored the one brewing inside the house, and he knew that whatever was coming, they weren't ready. But it was too late to turn back now. Then let's do it, Thomas said, his voice steadying. Whatever it takes. Let's fight. Clara nodded once, but her face remained unchanged. We don't fight the way you think we do, Thomas. We fight with everything we have left. The house groaned, the wind pressing against the walls like it knew what was coming. Thomas couldn't help but feel that the reckoning had already begun, and there was no escaping it. But now, he wasn't sure he wanted to. The night was heavier than it had been in days, thick with the weight of unspoken things. The wind rattled the windows, but the house remained still, the silence inside suffocating. Thomas stood at the window, staring out at the darkened woods. Something was coming. He could feel it in his bones, the air charged with anticipation. Clara's warning from earlier echoed in his mind. We don't fight the way you think we do. What did that mean? How were they supposed to fight a force that had already claimed so much? He turned to look at her, sitting by the fire, her eyes vacant again, lost in a world only she could see. He wanted to understand. He had to, but the more he tried to, the more she pulled away. The house creaked. A low rumble seemed to rise from deep within the walls. Clara looked up at him, her gaze sharp, like she had been waiting for something. Her lips parted, and she spoke, but the words felt more like a command than a question. It's time, she said. Thomas's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Clara didn't answer directly. She stood up, walking toward the door. The curse is awake. It's here. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook, a low, deep vibration that rattled the floorboards. The wind outside picked up, roaring through the trees, and Thomas could hear something else now, something that sounded like chanting. He looked at Clara, and for the first time, there was fear in her eyes. She reached for his hand, gripping it tight. They're coming! Before Thomas could ask her what she meant, the house erupted in chaos. The front door burst open, and a figure stepped into the doorway, tall, dark, and shadowed. Behind him, the silhouette of the Harper family emerged, a wall of cold, silent power. Caleb Harper's eyes locked on Thomas. Did you think you could escape? Caleb's voice was a low growl, as though the very air was meant to crush them. He stepped forward, his boots heavy on the floor. This land belongs to us, and we take what we are owed. Clara stepped in front of Thomas, her hand shaking but her resolve firm. Not tonight, she said, her voice stronger than Thomas had ever heard it. You won't take anything else from me. And then, as if the words had summoned it, the fire broke out. It started small, a flicker in the corner of the barn, but it spread quickly. The flame surged, crackling, swallowing the night. The fire was no longer just a battle. It was a reckoning, consuming everything it touched. Thomas turned to Clara, his face set in grim determination. We fight now. Clara nodded, but her eyes remained focused on the fire. Yes, we do. The flames roared. The house trembled, and for the first time, Thomas understood. This was more than a fight for survival. It was a fight for the soul of the land. And now it was too late to turn back.